Okay, welcome everybody to the Winners Win podcast. This conversation is very close to my heart. I think a few episodes ago, I talked about how we alleviate people out of poverty. We talked about stats. And my guest today is, and I'm really gonna need you to tune your mind high because he's such a powerful voice. He's such a breath of fresh air. Brian Mbele is the head of legal for SA Credit Repair. For SA Credit Clear.
Yes.
My bad. And the conversation we want to have today is to talk about the rules of credit, to talk about what the law provisions, the framework, and what their business does, essentially. And I think there's a lot of jewels you're about to drop for this audience. So, Brian, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Winners.
Many thanks for welcoming me.
Absolutely.
It's really an honor to be here.
Yeah.
And thanks for the warm welcome.
This would be your second ever interview
if you want to coach it that way, yes.
Or your second ever public conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Why have you chosen to stay out of the public sphere?
Well, before I answer that, let me just go back to just this. SA Credit Clear is the name of the company.
Gotcha.
And just for purposes of clarity.
Thank you.
There is another company called Credit Clear. So
Okay.
many consumers confuse us with Credit Clear, where in fact we are not Credit Clear, but we're SA Credit Clear. And I say this because Credit Clear, I must say it, are the ones who are actually giving people quite a number of problems. And so when people come to SA Credit Clear, in their first mind, they're thinking that we are Credit Clear. So even for a podcast, I'm sure somebody would be listening and say, oh my God, that guy is from SA Credit Clear. What is he here to talk about? But I thought it's important for me to clear that.
I appreciate that.
And our website is www.sacreditclear.co.za.
Okay.
Many thanks.
Brilliant. Can you talk about the problems or we get to that
We'll
later?
get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into that. Let me answer the question you asked me. You said, what made me...
Yes. Stay within the private space.
Well, I think, first of all, it's quite important to understand that the public space is a space that is not so much about you, but about others.
Right.
And as such, the public space offers one the opportunity to be part and parcel of the movement of society.
Yes.
At our own different levels and avenues. Yes. So for me, I took a very considered decision when I was very young in my professional development. That I think it's important for one to know themselves first, before they plunge into the public to start speaking or to start even participating in anything to do with public, because it requires a certain level of character to be in the public sphere. The obligation is to be able to set an example by what you do and how you do. And I just felt personally that at the right time, the Lord will direct as such. Right. When I say the Lord, I mean opportunity, I mean the universe, so it is here today.
I always say we never have to de-risk ourselves from saying the Lord, at least in this generation. You studied law, and what was that path like?
Wonderful. I've always known I wanted to study law. In fact, when I was in grade 8, many years ago, about 1996, at that time, there was a very famous series that used to play, an international series, it was called The Practice.
Okay.
And I used to watch it religiously because I had not yet at that point been inspired to a point where I had an idea of who I was and what I wanted to do. And so when I was watching that series, I was able to go into a world which was not available to me here, but was available to me here. And to be able to then figure out these people on TV, they're talking about these matters, family law, business law, all sorts of things. And it really spoke to me, because I think it spoke to the core values of who I was at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And I knew from then I wanted to be a lawyer. So even in my high school career, the studying was towards that. That's why, for instance, in my subject choices, history was one of the most important subjects that I took.
Okay.
Yes. And then almost 20 years later, I'm a lawyer.
Oh, really? Okay. That's fascinating. Tell me about we were talking earlier and you almost just began to define this in the most incredible way. What is the system of credit?
Well, we can say a lot of things about the systems of credit, but I think let's go to the basics. First, the idea of credit. We know, of course, that our economy is built on the credit system.
Right.
That's the global international economy. And as such, therefore, we need to have what you call a stable financial system. And that stable financial system, the core of that health depends on the state of credit
Right.
of any economy or any person or any family unit or any business. And credit, as we know, is something that you create out of thin air.
Right.
So one could say that spiritually, it's an entity that has been created, the purpose of which is to enable growth. And we know, therefore, that credit is about the provision of the right to expand on certain needs and services that you require, provided that you are you qualify for that credit. And on that basis, then you have what you call the financial ability to be able to now regulate, administer, and manage your financial issues in your life.
Okay. Yeah. Now, as far as the credit system is concerned, what do you at SA Credit Clear do both at a framework point of view and then just practically to ensure that people are participating in the credit system?
In simple terms, we assist consumers to repair their credit status.
Okay.
Now, as simple as that sounds, let's break it down.
It's complex.
Yes. First, who is a consumer?
Okay.
A consumer is any natural person, in this instance, any individual person who has the right to participate in the economy. So an adult, that is any person who is 18 years older, that is a consumer.
Right.
Also, a consumer can be active and non-active.
Okay.
An active consumer is a person who is active in the economy. They're able to exchange services, products, they're able to buy, they're able to use, they're able to get credit. An unactive consumer is the one that has been excluded from the market because they don't have the prerequisites to be active. In other words, you obviously can't speak of credit if you are not employed, or if you don't have your own business, or if you don't earn any commission or any income. Because to qualify for that credit, you have to be able to prove that. So that's what a consumer is. Now, when we say repair, I must go to this. We have this thing that people know. They say in society, I have been blacklisted.
Yes.
You've heard that?
Yes.
Well, the truth is there's no such thing as being blacklisted.
Right. Like we're all on a list with a...
It doesn't exist. So for instance, if you've missed your rental payments, you'll get a letter that will say to you, if you don't pay your rental by this date, we're going to blacklist you. Could be the same thing. You receive a letter from a clothing shop that you have credit with, and they say, if you don't pay us, we'll blacklist you. So there's no such thing as a blacklisting. What the law speaks about is what we call an adverse credit listing. The words explain themselves.
Gotcha.
So if you are some way or another blacklisted, it means that against your credit profile, there are adverse listings. There are listings that are not positive in relation to your use of credit. It could be for different reasons. That is what we do. So we assist clients to move from a position where their credit report or credit status has been affected to a point where they're unable to now apply for credit and get that credit. There are different situations, and the list is not as vast. Is lost. Is a lot. But for simple things, we could have, for instance, a judgment against your credit profile. What a judgment means is that, let's say, for instance, you bought a car, and along the process, before you've paid all the full installments, you then a lot of people experience, for example, the COVID
Yes.
consequences.
Yes.
So they lose their jobs, they lose their ability to earn income, and then they are unable to pay for their car. And then after 3 months of not being able to pay for that car, then the bank will obviously now start with the enforcement proceedings to be able to recoup their car because you're unable to pay for it. So in that situation, the bank will then continue to issue summons after that. And if the summons, you're not defending them, and they get to a point where the court issues an order against you, that is a judgment.
Okay.
Now, that judgment, in terms of the law, will be listed in the credit bureau against your name for a period of 5 years.
Okay.
Basically meaning, for that period of 5 years, you will obviously not be able to apply for credit because you have a judgment against your name. Because there's no creditor who would want to extend you credit if when they look at your history, they say, but ooh, you didn't pay such and such a bank. So the probability is you won't be able to pay me.
Yeah.
So we exclude you from that.
But that 5 years is only if it's unpaid. But if it's paid, then it's removed immediately.
Right. So that's the problem. The solution where we come in is that now when you come to us and you say, ooh, I want to apply, but they say I've got a judgment. Then you say, okay, what does your credit report looks like? Now, every citizen in the country is entitled to one credit report annually.
Yes. One free credit.
One free credit report annually. As much as that is free, unfortunately and regrettably, people don't download their credit reports. They don't download their credit reports, and then they don't engage with the information in that credit report, because that credit report presents to you your state of financial worthiness in the market.
Right.
If we want to know about you, your wealth, we want to know about your ability to create wealth and so forth, we look at your credit report. So when we get that credit report, then it will tell us what is wrong on your credit report, so that we can now comprehensively and holistically deal with each and every one of those problems according to their priorities.
Yeah.
Because of course, repairing your credit report or credit status is not just an event. It is a process.
Yes.
So you need to be able to look at your credit report to understand what are these adverse listings, if any, in my report.
Right.
What information is included in the credit report? Well, first of all, your personal information is included in the credit report. That is your biographical details, who you are, your name, your ID, where you live, your phone numbers, a history of all your phone numbers that you've ever had, a history of all your addresses that you've ever had. All your biographical details is there. Then the list of all the accounts that you have, all credit accounts that you have will be listed in your credit report. And the state of those credit accounts will also be listed in the credit report.
Right.
Including any adverse listings in relation to those credit accounts.
Right.
And that information is what we look for when we look into your credit report to say, ooh, you've got an adverse listing, a judgment. Ooh, you've got a default here. Ooh, you've got an unpaid account. Ooh, you've got this and that. Then we move from that point of view.
Can we talk about severity? What is the most severe listing versus, call them, less severe listings?
Right. So in terms of the body, the framework of the NCA and the regulations, the minimum that you could be listed for is 1, and the maximum is 10 years. And that 10 years period relates to a listing that we call sequestrations.
Right.
Now, what a sequestration is that your estate has been sequestrated.
It's over.
It's over. You're unable to pay your debts. Your creditors have taken you to court. They have, in a sense, for companies it's called liquidation. But for people it's called sequestration. So basically, once the sequestration order has been issued, automatically you'll be excluded for 10 years. However, the law does make provisions that even before the lapse of that 10 years, should your circumstances change, you can now approach the court to then say to the court, there is good cause for me to get back, to be rehabilitated. That's what it's called. And of course, your lawyers will have to assist you to be able to put a case to demonstrate that despite this order, you are in a position where, for instance, you are able to go back to the market. Now, the importance of that, we see most cases at SA Credit Clear from entrepreneurs,
Right.
who come through, who say, I have been hustling for the past so many other years
Yes.
to build this business, and I've built it. And like any other business person, of course, I'll go through issues,
Yes.
right? And those issues, in most instances, cash flow issues,
Yes.
clients canceling, and all those kind of things. And you end up in what we call an unenviable financial situation,
Right.
where now you are unable to pay everything, you are unable to do anything. And then as a result, by operation of law, these restrictions in the NCA, the National Credit Act, these adverse credit listings find their way to your
profile.
To your profile.
Right.
Now, they shackle you. So in a sense, for you to be able to get out of that, you'd have to deal with that first.
Right.
And that's why I find many instances, very sad cases of entrepreneurs coming forward, where you can see that, man, this is good, this can go forward, but for this. So our argument there is that when the law was put up, and in fact the system of the law as we know it and how it's implied and implemented in our country with our history, you find that there was not proper thinking about these kind of things.
Right.
In America, for instance, entrepreneurs can be liquidated for however many times. I mean, look at President Trump, for example. How many times has he been liquidated? So they encourage a culture of entrepreneurship. Yes. Our laws, in a sense, as much as they're very, very good, I think there's a gap there for persons, for instance, like entrepreneurs. We need to find better ways.
Can you elaborate on how, and I do want to talk to your point about how the law enables economic participation, but also how the law could have been better written for entrepreneurs. What's the prohibiting factor?
Well, okay. Let's go within the purview of credit law, a bit of history. So we can see the different character of these laws. So before the National Credit Act came into being, obviously there was something.
Right.
Now, the credit market was regulated by what we used to call the Usury Act.
Okay.
And the Credit Agreement Act. So those two laws and other laws related to them regulated the issue of credit in South Africa. And those laws were not empowering enough for a majority of our people.
Right.
Because people couldn't get access to credit. Because there was no such thing as financial institutions being obliged to ensure that people are not recklessly indebted. They don't just give money to people without looking at affordability.
For sure.
So the National Credit Act came as a result of Parliament, which is the lawmakers, saying, no, man, we need to ensure that our people have access to credit so that they can be able to reap the benefits of these constitutional rights that we've enshrined in the Constitution. Because if you look at the Constitution and the preamble, it says that we believe that every person should be able to reach that potential.
Right.
So in a capitalist market like ours, the rules are simple. Credit is a cornerstone of the economy.
Yes.
So if you're unable to access it, your legacy has been defined.
Right.
So we've got the National Credit Act, which then changed the character of the old laws and gave a new character to now laws that have to do with credit. What are the most important things that act did? 19 years later, after it was passed. First thing, it has created an obligation for all financial institutions to not just give you credit, but to make sure that you can afford it and you can pay it back. So that you don't get into a situation of reckless living. Two, it has entrenched the right to apply for credit. You have the right to apply for credit.
Right.
But that right must be considered within a context. Earlier, I spoke about active and non-active consumers.
Yes.
The right to apply for credit for a non-active consumer means nothing.
Right. Right.
Because how am I going to exercise that right if I am already disabled? Which then goes to what we are trying to do is SA Credit Clear to say a huge part of our services should be on education.
Big time.
And a huge part of all of the financial services participants should be on ensuring that, for instance, their clients who become over indebted find ways to come out of it.
Right.
That's important. Thirdly, amongst other things, it has created a regulator, the National Credit Regulator.
Yes.
This is what you call the class captain of the credit market,
right,
who then gets to regulate how credit is given, how consumer rights are exercised, how consumers are treated, how disputes are resolved, and so forth and so forth. Yes. That's the character now. So the character of the new credit law is enabling, it's transformative.
Okay.
In other words, it takes into consideration that before, the situation was such that for a majority of people, credit was not available.
Right.
People were discriminated against on the basis of their color, on the basis of their class, for them to be able to get credit.
Yes.
Now, all of those things are done away with because the new law in the Credit Act has got a new nature.
Gotcha.
And that nature is rehabilitative, it is constructive, it is
right,
transformative.
It's meant to be.
It's meant to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the transition. There's two types of transitions. The first is for the non-economic participant, consumer. And then the second transition is for the entrepreneur. I'll be a little bit vulnerable. I'm one of the entrepreneurs that got completely decimated by COVID, right? So you go through this period. And I remember speaking to a creditor and saying, during that period, they, in their business, call it desperate loans, where even as an entrepreneur, you forget that there's such a thing as a credit record, right? So practically, let's talk about the first person who is not, as you call, participating in the system. How do you transition them out? Now, and I'm saying this because a very big portion of this country live on grants, etc., etc., etc. How do you transition that person from that into a participant? And then we'll come to the entrepreneur.
Yes. Well, I can't answer that question without me getting into the ground norm of the situation.
Right.
In any instance, a person is a person, one.
Right.
Without anything else outside of them, they are on their own. So I think what we need to learn is that we can't do anything outside if we don't start inside.
Right.
Now, credit is all about values and behavior. You can't come from a background that has had what we call a mixed type of a hybrid type of a orderly chaotic value system over 400 years, and then assume that at 18 years after you finish high school, you are now fully empowered with the skills and the soft knowledge that you require to be able to navigate yourself through this new adult phase of yours that has responsibilities. Because now you have an ID, an identity document.
Yes.
You are now indebted to the government with or without your own consent.
Correct.
That's why you have a death certificate.
Correct.
Because when the country, because it also has credit, must go and get credit where it gets credit. It needs to present its affordability. It says we've got 60 million people. Here they are.
Yes.
So you get your ID, and then you get your first job, and you engage in this capitalist society without fully comprehending the rules of the game. The game is going to play with you. That's why the ups and downs in credit clearing. So it begins first with the person. The first question you must ask is, do you know the National Credit Act?
Okay.
What does the law say about the National Credit Act? That's the first thing. Because the game and the rules of the game are based on behavior. So if you fail at the first level, you will fail in the rules of the game.
Right.
What do I mean? Practically.
Right.
You will go through a cycle where what you buy with credit, because you fail to exercise the appropriate level and character of behavior and values, you then sabotage yourself.
Okay.
You sabotage your credit score. Whether you're a consumer or an entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
So for those who are non-active and those grant receiving persons, unless individually a person says there's something better for me out,
Right.
we can always train people and develop people, but you can't take the horse to the river and make it drink. You can take it to the river, but it must choose to drink.
Right.
So I think for non-active consumers, we can teach financial literacy, we can teach financial education, we can teach credit, but all those teachings will mean nothing if the context, if the foundation is not right.
Right.
So it means we need to fix that foundation first for those non-active consumers,
Okay.
because they're also in danger. It's not just financial institutions who are in the game of credit. We've got people who are called, or businesses called mashonisas.
Yes, we're getting there.
Right. So grandma gets 350, but last month she had to go and ask for 400 or 300 from the mashonisa. The interest is much more than the financial institutions would give to the gogo. Because the mashonisas, as much as they're supposed to be following the law, in practice they follow their own laws. Totally different. So those non-active consumers are at really a danger. They're really a danger. The only thing to fix that is really that personal drive of being able to, it's got nothing to do with whether you're educated or not.
Right.
This is a human thing. It's embedded in you as a person.
Right.
When you wake up in the morning, your spirit ought to appreciate and register your surroundings. And that ought to then put you to the next level.
Right.
But for most of us, even that is silent. That's the problem with most of our population. Silence, and sometimes you can't blame it, because over time, this thing becomes your reality. I mean, how many people have been looking for jobs? People have been looking for jobs for years. If we talk about the right to receive credit in relation to a person who's the non-active participant who's been looking for a job for years, this discouragement, it gets into the spirit, it permeates the spirit.
Yes.
And then in one community, you now have this energy of oppression.
Yes.
It inhibits the true life of the values that are required. What do I mean? In your own home, mom and dad, is their budget. That budget has got nothing to do with how much you earn.
Right.
It's a tool. Behavior, value. Now, most families don't have budgets.
Right.
To know what are our expenses, what is our income, what do we have left, what do we save. Right. We are living as it goes.
Right. And so much.
So this is a living organism that is not appropriately responding in its own environment. And therefore you have all these dis-eases,
Right.
such as adverse credit listings. They point to a bigger picture, values, behaviors. Why do I say that? They will say to you, if you want to keep your good credit score, you need to demonstrate these good behaviors. I'm sure you know them. Give me one good behavior if you're a good credit consumer.
I mean, paying your account on time.
There we go. Pay your account on time. Yeah. What is the possibility of not paying your account on time if you have not developed a discipline of budgetary actions and spending?
Okay, let me steel man this conversation. The steel man simply represents the other, the counterpoint. The counterpoint here is that people do not generally have that level of agency where they can, for themselves, decrypt the system. You are therefore very vulnerable to how the system is designed, the system of credit at the moment. Number two is there is no access to that knowledge at a very primary level, because behavior is fostered over time, right? So if you're spending your entire high school curriculum having learned about World War I, II, and, but do not have a fundamental understanding of how the system in which you live operates, you may not be blamed for where you end up with that lack of agency, right? So not what it leads to is the lack of education, not knowing how to budget, not knowing if you are to budget. And so the first time someone who comes and says, hey, here's a store card, you can now go buy your favorite Nikes. There is zero programming in me to say, but that's not the right decision to make. It is just that I now have access to this money. That's the first thing. The second thing is, at an entrepreneur level, I also do want to ask you the question around when a economy is brought to its knees and made to stop, meaning we no longer have the opportunity, you physically cannot go to work. Why did we not get to a situation where, and it's weird because SOEs, etc., get bailouts. Why did we not experience a consumer bailout?
Okay.
Or why does not exist? Or why does that not exist in the provisions of the law?
Okay.
I know I've said a lot, but let's jump.
Let's start with the first one. Just remind me the first one again.
The first one is about people without agency.
The
lack of agency comes from a lack of...
Yeah, I'm happy you said lack of urgency. It comes from the inside. I've got this model that says IME, inspire, motivate, empower. You can't motivate someone who's not inspired. Inspiration comes from inside, and inspiration comes from knowing who you are. I don't agree that there is no information. Information is available. And I also don't agree on the argument that says there's no urgency. No.
Let me correct. There's a difference between, I'm not saying urgency, I'm saying agency.
Agency, yes. No, I'm responding in the manner I am because those are my beliefs.
Let's go.
Holistically, which is what I believe is wrong with us. It's 2025. I have a smartphone. You have a smartphone. Now, I can simply just go on my phone here and say, what is my credit score? I didn't need to go to high school for me to be told that there's such thing as credit. I'm engaging with it now. I went to the bank. The bank, I'm applying, the bank says your credit score. Okay. What is my, and then it says, what is my credit score? It shows me here, free credit score. I can learn about it.
Yes.
But that means there is an incentive, a personal incentive of me to learn about something that's good for me, for my decisions. So I think we need to get over this idea that someone else is responsible for my own. It's 2025. We've got TVs, we've got podcasts, we've got websites, we've got knowledge, we work. It's just, I say, it's simply that thing of, I'll read it some other time. Or somebody else must read it for me.
Right.
Or somebody else must tell me about it.
Right.
Not me, not you, but it's your money.
Right.
So I think we have enough knowledge. We have enough information. We really do. That information needs to get to people. They need to take it for themselves. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. If I had to do a survey in any of the SA Credit Clear clients and say, when was the last time you read anything about the National Credit Act? I think a low number would come back and say, we read it. Why is that important? Why am I saying so? You can't be a citizen in a country and you don't understand the law. Then why do you have an ID? These are the laws which are passed by Parliament. People we believe we've been sent there to represent the people. So if the people who have been represented are given the laws on their own, by them consenting to the power that be, that says, create the laws, and then they create the National Credit Act. Isn't there a responsibility on people to read that, to know what's in there, so that they can be able to understand their rights? Because we love to say we've got a right, but what is it? And what are the responsibilities of that right? So my argument is, we have a lot of information.
Yes.
We just need to go to it. And this podcast, for example, on the issue of the first point where you said, people don't know. I'm saying they do. Then they can go on the website. They can go and Google the National Credit Act.
Yes.
They can go and learn about credit scores. They can go and learn about budget. It's there. We live in an information age.
Which I don't disagree with. I just think that this needs to be a part of your 12-year-olds, 13-year-old, 14, 15, 16-year-old schooling curriculum.
Correct.
You have to understand it from that level. It makes zero sense that you spend, what do you spend, 18 years in school and only get your driver's license afterwards, only get your bank accounts thereafter. And the same thing should apply with these type of laws, because it's the same thing about the tax laws. To your point about the survey, how many people understand the tax laws? No bueno. Very few people understand. So I think it's okay to disagree.
Not disagree.
Yes.
I agree.
I think that knowledge base needs to be installed much earlier, much earlier.
Let's unpack
in
it.
order to avoid
These problems.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'll be very specific. In order to avoid black people failing for a longer period of time, because you're making the errors and the mistakes based on the knowledge you failed to obtain. And that knowledge can be put in front of you. If we had this in a test, and your point about, well, he didn't study and therefore he didn't understand the NCR, etc., it's a different conversation. But if it does not exist at all in the ecosystem of schooling, that's where it's problematic.
Well, I must say, I have engaged with the current material from public school.
Right.
Life orientation, maths literacy, and so forth. And I was actually quite happy to see that these are subjects that have been actually broached.
Okay.
That are there in the books. That going to elaborate on this. They're there in the books, which means the students must engage with them.
Okay.
The teachers must ensure that the engagement becomes an entrenched knowledge.
Yes.
That goes to the character and the nature and the type of education, the context of that institution where you go, the context and the character of the people in that system of education. Now, we have a lot of macro problems. We can learn it in school, in the classroom. I agree with you. We learned it and it ends there because we don't entrench it in our lives by applying it. What do I mean? Kids go to school, they come back from school, they go home. They must do homework. That's the opportunity for parents to now start entrenching these principles that these kids are learning from school in their real life. So, you've learned this, great. How do we apply it here at home? We discount all of those things, but they are important. Right. But we know there are problems. We don't have that type of a culture in many of our homes because of all this history of 400 years of oppression and the consequences of that and what we now have. We operate from a default survival system. I mean, once mother or father has time to sit down and talk to you about what you learned, the financial maths literacy outcomes in school when it comes to personal budgeting, when I need to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's 9 o'clock, I haven't done any clothes for my kids and I have to wake up in the morning. So the situation perpetuates. And you're right, until someone or something says, boom, here's the education. Right. Do it this way. So I think we need to have must put more effort in ensuring that those efforts are emboldened. That's why this issue of credit for me is not just about the law. For sure. Really touches on every aspect of society. Yes. Because it goes to the core of who we are as a people, what we want to be as a people, and how we resolve our issues so that we can overcome them to go into the future. So at all levels, it's got its own challenges and dynamics, right? You talked about that level, I addressed it, that I think we need to build a culture of being able to have, and this helps us to destroy these generational curses that you referred to. And then, of course, when a child goes through their life cycle, now they become 12, become 16, they become 18. There are certain things that must be fundamental in a child's life for them to be able to now come out as an 18-year-old adult who is now properly taught, who is appropriately fit for purpose. Right? To go into the market and become a contributing citizen. Yes. Now, the second part of the question, which was?
Let's lead with this. The second part of the question is, we go through COVID, entrepreneurs are decimated. They cannot operate their businesses. We come out of COVID, everyone whose credit record was affected by that is left to fend for themselves. Maybe let me put it we'll go into the general thing, but the general question to you would be, what or why does the law, in that instance, where we now have a national state of disaster, not make provision for a credit amnesty, for example?
Well, first answer to that is, I didn't hear anyone come up with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So perhaps we don't have
I should have been around.
No one brought it up.
Yeah.
And then also secondly, it also has what we call moral hazard issues, because the whole point of credit is that if I give you credit, you promise to pay me back.
Yes.
Within the rights and responsibilities we agreed upon. So at a surface level, it would be quite wrong for a blanket amnesty of let's forgive everyone's debts, because it has an impact on the balance sheet of everybody. There's an impact. So there's supposed to be certain justifiable circumstances.
Yes.
And this is what happened at that time when banks then started engaging with their clients and said, because we're going through this, we are able to stay your installment for the next 3 months, and then we will renegotiate and restructure your debt obligations to us so that we can give you a reprieve for that 3 months. But you must be reminded of your agreement,
yes,
that you have agreed to pay us back.
Yes.
So you must pay us back. Let me just also note that in 2014, there was a credit amnesty which the government actually put out, where the adverse credit listings were removed from consumers' records to give them a once-in-a-lifetime chance to be able to come back into the economic market.
Right.
Interesting thing, the statistics between 2014 2025 in relation to the state of credit are more or less the same.
Yes.
Which goes back to that issue of behavior, values, because in 2014 they were forgiven. We were forgiven. But the majority of those who were forgiven, we see them again in 2025 in the same situation, which is the foundation is still not right.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I don't know if it's a blanket amnesty, for example. What I was thinking about is, if you are forcing me not to work, what you're giving the institution is the power, to your point, to say to me, we will stay your payment. The part they don't tell you is the interest that follows post that.
Yes.
And someone who may have been close to finish off paying their house or their car finds themselves at the end of that tunnel. Yes, I didn't have to pay for 6 months, but I've just accrued 6 months worth of interest and some on top of the capital that was already due. Those little niggly things is some of the stuff that we should have thought about a little bit more carefully.
Yes, of course. That goes to the relationship between the credit provider and the debtor at a micro level.
Yeah.
Basically, the ability to negotiate the terms of the contract.
Right.
Now, there's this thing called you have the right to contract, because every credit is based upon a credit agreement.
Yes.
In that credit agreement, there are two people. One, the debtor. Two, the creditor.
Right.
It's a document that says, me and you have agreed on this. In practice, we haven't agreed on anything. I just signed it. Because I have to get it. Have you ever heard of a person who gets a check card or a credit card from a bank and then says to their bank,
Please change clause 6.
Change clause
It
16.
never happens.
It never happens.
Correct.
So again, I'm coming to that fact that the rules of the game are stacked against the debtor so much, and structurally so. Because of course, those that make money must continue to make money, but those are the rules. But you have the opportunity to negotiate your credit agreement at the first instance, but that opportunity does not come out to be a real right of negotiation. It's very subservient. You take what we give you. I mean, if they give you 11% interest, you're lucky. If they're giving you 14% interest, well, you're just gonna have to take it because, well, what not? So someone in the bank has decided that, well, you're falling under such a risky portfolio of clients that they must give you more an increase interest than the one applicable to others. So it's really an issue of parity between the two parties, which does not exist, and it would only exist if we really truly look at the object of the NCA, which is to protect the consumer, over and above the National Credit Act, we've got the Consumer Protection Act, for example,
Right.
which sets out rules and principles such as treating customers fairly.
Right.
Now, is it fair, for example, if I go to a bank and apply for credit and they just give me 40%, they expect me to sign? Should they not explain to me why they give me 40%? Should I have the right to be able to shop elsewhere to find if others can give me a better credit, better interest than that?
Yeah.
Those are the type of stuff.
They'll say your risk profile determines.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get on to give the people some good news. Right.
Well, the good news.
How do we ensure, for example, the first time you get a summons? I want very practical stuff.
Yeah.
The sheriff shows up at your door. He's got a summons. How do you avoid getting to that point where it goes from summons to a judgment?
Right.
Because that's the painful part.
Thank you, my
for
leader.
the average.
Thank you, my leader. Before we even get to the summons, because once you get to the summons,
because you're already in hot water.
rotten already. So before we even get to the summons, it goes back to behavior, value. So when someone knocks on your door and says, Ted, you owe me money, your value system and behavior ought to be, let me engage.
Right.
Dude, I owe you money. I don't have it. Can we get into an arrangement? An arrangement that is doable for me and for you. Now, before we get to a summons, the minute you are unable to pay your debt,
Yes.
that's at the point, the first trigger, where you ask yourself the question, am I in danger or no danger? Because only you know your circumstances.
Right.
You could not, it could be that you didn't pay your debts because maybe you had an unexpected expense.
Right.
It could be that you didn't pay your debt because, yes, you were fired or retrenched, or your life is just a mess. It's just recklessness all over the point.
Right.
It's at that point now when you have to now talk to your creditors, go to a bank and say, guys, I am not able to fulfill my agreement as per the agreement.
Okay.
In terms of the law, I can negotiate to rearrange that. I want to do it myself first. In most instances, practically, the bank doesn't give you. They won't. They'll just tell you, no, it is what it is.
Right.
You
sign the contract.
Yeah, they speak negotiating terms, but they don't do it practically.
Yes.
Now, if you've spoken to your creditor and there's no way forward with your creditor, then you are now moving closely to the map that has been set out in the National Credit Act that sets out the steps to now climbing this mountain,
Right.
and eventually descending on it.
Right.
The first step would be what we call debt review. It is a mechanism that has been created by the National Credit Act for purposes of giving overly indebted persons reprieve so that they can renegotiate their credit agreements within the level at which they can afford it. So for instance, if you were paying 10,000 and now you're overly indebted, and then you have said to your creditors, guys, I'm overly indebted, let's renegotiate. They don't help you. The next step is debt review. You must now get into debt review. That's another thing, because it's another market, another sector, because it creates a new set of professionals called debt counselors.
Is that the problem you were talking about in the intro? Because we need to get to that
Yes,
problem.
we'll get into that one.
Okay.
Unintended consequences. It's always
Okay.
the case, isn't it? So the first step is debt review. What is a process where I can renegotiate my credit agreements, agree with all my creditors that I will now pay reduced installments for however time until I satisfy my debt to prevent the summons.
That is a formal process.
It's a formal process.
Okay. But it's also a negative, it also has a negative,
It has a negative
connotation.
connotation because
Okay.
the minute you're in debt review, we can't touch you. You're not. No one is going to give you credit. We're going to fix the problems now. Right. The idea is so that we will get to a point where you are able to fulfill your obligations.
Right.
And once you fulfill your obligations, then the debt counselor will give you what we call debt clearance certificate. Basically meaning this man is no longer overly indebted.
Right.
He's paid all his creditors, and now he is able to manage his life.
Is debt review voluntary? Or it's imposed by credit?
It's voluntary.
Okay.
It's voluntary. You can get into it. A lot of people get into it without proper comprehension. This goes back to the issue of behavior, values, knowledge, understanding. You have a lot of people who come to us who are in debt review, shackled because someone was sitting at home at 11 o'clock in the evening and the wife was like, hey, when are we paying the rent, Baba? Hey, the school fees are needed. Hey. And so the man says, yo. Okay, let me just figure out. And then they find debt review and say, because all these marketings and the adverts, for example, the way they are put together, they'll say to you, oh, South African law has made it possible for people to come out of debt and pay their debts, and it's so nice.
Consolidate.
Yes. And then you're like, oh, well, this is going to help me. Then you fill in a form on that website, put in the details, you send it. Now, most participants in the credit market are not fair. They don't comply with the treating customers fairly principle.
Okay.
Because most of the clients that come to us for debt review tell us that they did not get into debt review. They were just asking questions. But then they just woke up one day and then they found out
themselves
they're
in
debt review. And the thing about debt review is that, you see, that process is created by a statute, by law. You can't come out of it unless you follow the law. You can't come out of debt review unless the debt counselor says you are now not overly indebted. Here's a clearance certificate.
Oh, wow.
Any other way of coming out of debt review, you're going to have to approach the court to then show courts that you're not overly indebted. Oh, wow. There are so many things complicated in debt review. So it's important that if you are at a point where you feel that you're unable to pay your debts and it's becoming unmanageable, you must first speak to your creditors. If you feel that you have not found any happiness, then you need to consult a reputable debt counseling firm who will then take you through your circumstances and explain the process to you so that you know what you're in for in terms of the fees, in terms of the period, and in terms of the impact. It is that step that in most cases is fudged because some people don't even know who their debt counselors are. We had a situation where a client who was in debt review, it took us about more than a year to get them out of debt review because we had to deal with the mess of the system. Because as much as the law is clear, the system is convoluted. You have to know how to navigate it.
Who are the participants in that system? The credit bureau, the creditor, the consumer.
And then you have what you call the debt counselors.
The debt counselor.
And the debt review.
The ombudsman.
And the ombudsman is also there. Also the National Credit Act, the Consumer Protection Act is also there. And the Consumer Commission. There's so many of these regulators.
Brian, you see why I'm saying you're expecting someone to understand this entire ecosystem from just its...
I think on a basic level, this thing is like a hierarchy. It's like a process. I like how we're taking this discussion because it's going to allow us to cover every element of credit. We took it from summons, but we said before we get to summons, let's go back there because then it gives the people knowledge that there's nothing strange about being in an uncomfortable financial situation. You're a person. Things happen. Nobody wakes up and says, oh, well, I want to be in debt. It doesn't work that way. So if you are there now, because I do know even now, as we sit here, there are people watching this thing who are going through this stuff and they don't know how to go and want to go. So in relation to those who are already overly indebted, now they know, speak to your creditors. If your creditors don't agree, then go for debt review. But be careful when you go for debt review. Make sure you understand the process and make sure you understand what your rights are and how it impacts you.
Okay.
Right. Now let's assume that debt review doesn't help you. Or you didn't go for debt review.
Okay.
Or you didn't even talk to your creditors. You were just living in your head with your stress and just thinking to myself, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to do it? But you didn't talk to anybody about it.
Right.
Then you get a summons. There. It's late, Baba. It's late to the extent that now we have a piece of papers that are taking you to court. You must defend those papers. And that costs money. Because now you must raise a defense to the papers that you received from your creditor. Let's take a simple example. A vehicle finance agreement, right? That you sign when you go and get a car, right? You get to a point after 3 months, you haven't paid your debt, you haven't spoken to the creditor. After 3 months, they come and you get the summons. You must now respond to that summons to say, my intentions are to defend this summons, or I am consenting to what you want. If you want to defend it, you must have a good defense in law, because you must then be able to provide the defense. Why have you not paid? Why are we here? In most cases, there are no good defenses unless there are exceptional circumstances.
Okay. Apart from tactically stalling in court.
Yes, of course. I mean, you can stall.
Not that I'm encouraging it. I'm just
No. I think it's important at that time. I mean, when a person is trying to exercise the rights, they must exercise the rights to the fullest extent.
Right.
If it means that I must cajole so that I can buy time, then let it be. Provided,
Yes.
of course, there's a plan for it.
Yes.
So let's take it from summons. Let's presume it goes all the way through court, and then the defense is not accepted. We get to a point where the judge issues a judgment. It's an order against you.
Right.
Now you must return
the vehicle.
the vehicle. Over and above returning the vehicle, you still owe the bank the balance.
The balance of whatever
The interest,
the
the
auction
costs,
is.
and all of that stuff.
I mean, the auction is for 20% of the value, and then you still need to pay that.
And that will be listed on your credit record until such time it is paid off or it prescribes.
Okay.
For instance, debts prescribe after 3 years. For example, if I got money from a certain financial institution more than 3 years ago and they come back now and they say they want it, the law affords me the defense to say, well, you should have asked your money within 3 years. 3 years have passed, this debt has prescribed, it's got nothing to do with me.
But how does that happen if somewhere along the line a maybe collection agency reached out to you?
Yes.
And then you acknowledge the debt?
Yes. I'm happy you brought it up.
You can see I've been through a lot now.
Yeah, it's nice to be interviewed by someone who's informed, because then the conversation is
For sure.
nice. So prescription only helps you if it was not interrupted.
Got you.
If it was interrupted, you see, prescription, it must run for 3 years uninterrupted. But if during that period of 3 years, you get a call from a collections agency to tell you about your debt, you said, and if you acknowledge it, that would then indicate that it has been interrupted.
Okay.
But if there's no interruptions, you claim it. But there was also instances where, for example, you acknowledged nothing. They sent you emails, they sent you SMSs, they called you, you didn't engage with them, you didn't answer the phone, you didn't get into arrangements with them about when you will pay or whatever the case might be. You can still have prescription past master because it was them coming to you, but you didn't engage with them.
Okay.
You didn't engage with them, right? But in most instances,
You're saying you might still be liable
You
because
might-
you chose not to engage.
No. You don't have the obligation to engage. Your obligation is to pay the credit agreement. And if you decide that you don't want to pay for it, then you can just say, okay, it is what it is.
Okay.
Then the law takes its course. If during these 3 years, the bank doesn't come to you and engage with you, then you can claim prescription. Okay. If it's, however, interrupted because of the pressure and the stress of receiving these calls, and you decide to answer it and say, oh yeah, this is me who's talking, yes, I know that, yes, then I'll pay. You've interrupted prescription.
I see.
So if you have debts from some time ago, the first thing you do, find out if it's longer than 3 years.
Okay.
If it is longer than 3 years, then if it's on your credit report, you must contact the credit bureau.
How do you find out without accidentally saying you were acknowledging it?
Well, first of all, if you do know about it, then it's a problem because you're the subject of that credit, so you should have recollection of when you got it.
But I'm trying to figure out if it's
If you don't know, if you don't know that, then the credit report will tell you, because it tells you the dates of when the listing was done at the credit bureau. So you can get your credit report, all your accounts, all accounts listed. They will tell you when they were listed, give you a date. And if that date is more than 3 years, you can simply just write to the credit bureau and say, this account is more than 3 years. It must be written off. You also find these debt collectors who call people. I mean, it's a business.
Yes.
They buy these debtors' book, and then they also go out market and get people to pay. You need to know your rights there, where when somebody calls you after 3 years, you say, this debt has prescribed. Even if you write an email to them to say, this debt has prescribed and therefore I have no obligation to pay. that will be a confirmation of the fact that it's prescribed.
It's prescribed.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about the point system. By the way, is that the problem you were talking about earlier? Okay.
Yeah, because to have a good score, they would say a good score is about 600 up.
Yes.
And 600 down is not really good. Once it's lower than 500, then it's bad.
Okay.
But a good credit score is around 600 up.
Okay.
And then over that, it is perfect. So you should try and get your credit score around 600, 620, 621. There. That's a good credit score. Now, what affects a credit score? What comprises the credit score? I mean, really, it's all algorithms.
Okay.
Because even if you print at SA Credit Clear, for instance, our credit score extracts information from the top credit bureaus. And they all have different credit score.
Yes. Because they don't all have the same information.
Right. So here's a simple question in law, as a lawyer.
Right.
Is that rational? Is that rational? At a minimum level, it's rational to the extent that all credit bureaus are different. And of course, they ought to have different systems. Right.
Yes.
But if you take it further, at the end of the day, if you have a client before you who says, I was told I had credit adverse listings, I came to you, you helped me repay my credit report, I paid my debts, I was able to repay my credit, now I'm printing out a new credit report, and all these different credit unions are giving me a different score.
Yes.
So what is my credit score? That's not rational. It's not a rational place for a client to be.
For sure.
Because they need to know what is behind this score, what makes up this score. So these are the kind of moral hazards that come out of the system, where if you have a score of 610, the question for one credit bureau, and then you go to another one and it says 670, then you go to another one and it says 500, then one would say then rationally, the average of those four becomes your credit score. I'm talking rationality here.
Okay.
Because the problem I'm trying to expose here is that after you have repaired your credit, you now need a good credit score to go back into the credit market. And we know that all credit bureaus won't give you the same credit score. We also know, on the other hand, that other credit providers prefer information from certain credit bureaus. So you may have a good credit score at a certain credit bureau.
There you go.
But then when that credit provider comes to you and says, no, I want the X credit bureau credit report. The question I'm trying to say is that what makes that X credit bureau more special than the other credit bureaus? It goes to the issue of a rights culture. Hence the question, is it rational? Is it rational to have a consumer who says, I don't know what my credit score is, and when I apply for credit, I am subjected to certain measurements that are outside the law, because the law says I must not be discriminated against when I apply for credit. So if I go to a certain creditor and that creditor says to me, no, I can see your credit score in that credit bureau, but I want this one. That creditor is now introducing a rule that is not in the law. It's their law. It's not in the rule of law. So these are the kind of dynamics and moral hazards that we have structurally. This is what SA Credit Clear is trying to do. To be able to say, even in a situation where a person has absolutely no possibility of being cleared of their credit because of how they acted, when you look at the rights of that person in terms of the law, and you look at the situation and you apply constitutional jurisprudence, you can get to a point where you say, for instance, in a particular consumer, the treatment they receive from the regulation or the participating is irrational. Because it's irrational for me to have 4 different credit scores. Completely.
Right.
It's irrational. So where we're trying to go into a point, this is where our technology is coming in.
Okay.
We've made investments in trying to get into a point where we can be able to provide a sense of a reasonable base of what a person's credit score is, so that we can be able to empower clients to be able to go back, for example, to their creditor to say, but hang on a second, look at this, so that they have the power to negotiate. Because even when you apply for credit, the law says you've got the right to receive reasons for any rejection of your application. The bank must tell you why they rejected you.
So, this is the point I'm getting to. Bank A uses Experian. Bank B uses TransUnion. Bank C uses an aggregator, for example. Why do we not have a situation where you have a centralized credit bureau from which all credit bureaus pull the information from? And I'm saying this because if you go to Experian, if you're doing a credit score cleanup or a credit profile cleanup on your own profile, you have to go to Experian separately. You have to go to TransUnion separately to ensure that the data aligns. The onus is on you based on what your creditor is reporting to who. So if your creditor is not reporting to both, your information gets distorted. Whereas if you had the NCR have a central database about all your credit behavior, and these two bureaus are pulling from that central database, because I pray this is the technology you're building, that becomes a much better guided picture. And then everything else that they do can be their subscription products and alerts and all that sort of thing. Why does that framework not exist?
Well, simply because it's not provided for in the law, and it would be a opposite of what the law is provided for. The National Credit Regulator is a regulator. It has its own mandate from the law, and it can't do anything else other than that.
Got you.
Which is, it can't get involved, cannot be a credit bureau, but it can regulate credit bureaus. Now, the players, the credit bureaus, it's an open market. Competition is important. We don't need any one credit bureau to have dominance. I think it's a global expectation that we have a competitive environment. So it's good to have a number of credit bureaus, because then it allows customers.
Is it good?
It's a good thing. The bad thing is this lack of centralized scoring or measurement and so forth. But at the same time, we must also not take away the right of businesses to do business as they please. Remember, the right to apply for credit is just simply that: it's to apply. It's not. There's no right to credit. It's the right to apply for credit, and the creditors are at will to decide how they will give you that credit, provided they do it in a way that is compliant with the law. So it's something that we really can't do much about in terms of saying, promoting all these credit bureaus to have a central.
Yes,
it ought to be in a sense, but the system doesn't allow for that.
But what is the competitive advantage of having my complete information for a bureau? Is it that I'm going to sell to the bank and say ours is the most trusted source?
Right, and so again, it's players. They're different. They've got their own interests, their own motivations, their own objectives, and of course they need to make money as well. That's the whole point. You must make money, of course. So the point I'm trying to make is that credit providers they have the right to determine on their own which credit report they will place reliance on. And they do so because they back it up. We'd say they will back it up with their own data and so forth. And I think collaboration in respect of the national objective must be there. But I think we've forgotten the national objective, which is to liberate the masses by ensuring that they have access to credit. So we have people in their different silos doing their own things. For instance, the banks have organized themselves. We've got the Banking Association, which speaks for banks for things such as these. For example, in terms of the rules, once you've paid your judgment, you've paid it in full, or you've paid an account, the credit bureau must remove
the judgment.
Remove it. But there are certain banks who are part of a certain association who prefer not to remove it, but simply just update your record by saying account paid up. So again, it's who does who when they want to do it, however they want to do it. We believe that the space where people can get solutions to their adverse credit listing problems is really within the law and within the forums of the law, such as, for example, the courts. And I know for 19 years, there hasn't been a lot of activity in our courts relating to clearing of credit reports, because the substance of that law has really not been developed to the level where we can now go in and say it is a normal, ordinary process to go to court. Only a few people go to court to clean their credit record. But I believe that in time, being able to approach the courts would have the ability to now change the nature of the ecosystem as we go along. But that requires a concerted effort of people first knowing their rights and knowing that they don't have to take things lying down,
Right.
and knowing that everything is explainable. That's why we've got the rule of law. And then engaging with our problems, confronting them with the right expert advice to be able to exercise their rights. And collectively and cumulatively, as we go as a country, we will then start developing a new character in terms of how we deal with issues relating to credit impairment.
Got you. As we, by the way, we need a second conversation here because there's a lot. Why do I get penalized, or why does a consumer get penalized for seeking a lot of credit or for seeking credit?
Because you're reckless. Again, it goes back to the issue of credit for.
But if the thing about the notification on your profile is that if, to the point you made earlier, is that you have the right to seek credit. In that seeking of credit, if you get a notification that a credit inquiry was made on your profile, that has a negative connotation.
Correct. So
and yet another, and yet another.
Right.
Even though you have not selected that particular credit provider.
Right.
That's
Again,
problematic.
yes.
It sounds problematic.
Yes. You've really done your homework.
No, I've just lived it.
Most of the problems are from there. No one should be able to access your personal information. But in terms of inquiries being done against your credit report, you should, in any event, be the only person who gives consent for
Yes.
that. But in most instances, inquiries are conducted against people's profile without people's consent.
Right.
And that does impact on the person's credit profile. In those instances where you are sure that you didn't give consent, then you have a ground in law to then, of course, object to that. So you come to someone like us, they say credit clear, and then we say, well, did you do this search? You say, I've never done this in my life. It turns out in most instances, they probably did, they just forgot. Right? Now, the issue is, if you must fix that problem,
Yes.
they must obviously now commit to a process of fixing it, which is going to cost them. And then if it turns out that, in fact, they gave the consent, then there's nothing you can do about it. The inquiry is going to stay in the profile. Also, this thing of inquiries, why are you doing an inquiry when you know you're in debt? You must do an inquiry when you have... It goes back to the issue of behavior and values.
Right.
Because I certainly wouldn't buy airtime if I'm not going to use it. So if I want to do an inquiry, it means it's an intention to get into a credit agreement. It's not a game. I'm not doing an inquiry because I'm dreaming or I'm wishing to buy a car next year. First of all, before you do an inquiry, get your free report. Then you go, okay.
Which I get once a year.
Yes. It's fine. You look at it and you look at your score. And then you go, okay, from this report, I want to apply for a car. Will I be able to apply for a car?
Eligible.
Am I eligible? Then you can start doing the inquiry. But if you're going to do inquiries over and over, some people have got 10 inquiries within a space of 2 months. You have lowered your credit score by so many points. It's unbelievable because it's a behavior thing. It's saying to the credit market, you don't.
That I'm looking for credit.
You might be looking for credit, but you're looking for credit all over the place. You're shopping and buying. It means this one must be reckless.
But you just said earlier that I have the right to compare and see who's going to offer me the best deal.
That right has a
It's got a
right responsibility to behave proper. Because if you go to an inquiry If you do one inquiry at one financial institution and it's declined, why are you going to the next one? What will change?
Generally, that happens when you've gone to an aggregator. So someone's looking for a home loan, they go to a Uber. Uber is going to send it to all 4 or 5 banks they have relationships with.
It goes to,
Because Uber's trying to get you the best rate.
yes, it goes to being able to manage and treat and safeguard your personal credit status. First, you must look at it as that. It's the most important thing to you, because it's between you and your net wealth. That's what it is. So if you don't have that culture of taking care of your credit status, there's some people who are very finicky about it. They're really good at it. But sometimes when we talk about credit scores and credit profile, it's just after fact, my credit score. But if you have a culture of being one with the idea of protecting your credit score and knowing how to behave and knowing how to handle it, then you get into these things much less than other people would. Yeah, because you are aware and you are knowledgeable, and more than anything else, you can navigate. You've got a map of some sort. But if you completely have no idea, it's good to always get expert advice.
Understood.
Yeah.
This is somewhat philosophical. When you look at a country like China that uses social scoring, what's your view on that? What's your take on that?
I think China is far ahead, over and above all of these technological developments and their enhanced capacity. It's really far ahead, I would believe, solely on the basis of value system. The value system really determines everything. It's the totality of any nation's potential. What do I mean by value system? What are the type of values as a country do we adhere to and hold ourselves to? Because if we don't agree on a set of values that we all adhere to and hold ourselves to, then it's everyone for themselves. I want to give you a simple example.
Right.
I'm sure you know that we've got the greatest constitution in the country, in the world. People say that we've got the greatest constitution in the world.
Right. I've heard it said.
As it said. I'll tell you one thing. When you read that piece of information, that piece of document, it's a well-written act. I love reading it. Great, it's aspirational. Does it have legs? Does that book have legs? Does that book have a brain? Does that book... So what I'm trying to say is that we must first fix the value system, because human resource is the most important thing in any nation. And that human resource must have been developed to its fullest potential to be able to now take advantage of whatever innovations that are available today. I mean, we're in the information age. There's a lot that we can do as a society in terms of that, to be able to comprehend new careers and new futures, and we don't need Tom to come and tell us about it. So the value of working in unison is lacking.
Right.
It is lacking. So we can say we want to be like China. We can have all the technology that they have, but if we don't have the right value system, what is your focal point, your navigator? I want to use the Constitution to make a point. You would find someone who says they've got the right to this, but it's never the responsibility.
Yes.
We also don't respect that Constitution, because then we expect to enforce our own law and our own opinion simply because we say we disagree with that Constitution. So you are coming out now of this system of law.
Yes.
And you're going into a system of lawlessness because you have an opinion.
Correct.
It may well be genuine, but you're actually causing legal moral hazard because you're coming out of the system. Let's address these things within. Yeah. I think the problem with us, the problem with our nation, is we are not committed to the objects of our laws. We don't say the National Credit Act's objective is to give access to consumers and then say, okay, how is that demonstrated in reality, in our behavior and in our values? And it's not just people, it's creditors themselves. I've often wondered, and I said, if I was a creditor and I had a lot of people come to me and they They get declined for credit. I think it would be to my benefit if I make sure that within my operations, I have some incentive to assist these people to overcome so that they become active credit consumers. That grows my balance sheet. But again, values and system.
Right.
We don't have a central point of what is our value as a nation?
Shared
what is
values.
our mission? What is our vision? From the top down. You know, the Bible says the oil flows from above. So whatever flows from above will then permeate and influence the character of the nation. That's how things work. And we don't appreciate that. So I think if we fix the values, first we must agree what are those values.
Right.
Coincidentally, we have this thing now called the national dialogue. Personally, I don't think we need a dialogue. We've had many dialogues. I think we just need action and bold, courageous action, and that is lacking.
Yeah.
That's why I believe that entrepreneurship is a tool through which we will have the ability to restructure our society,
Yes.
provided we have men and women of character who have the necessary values to be able to understand that their role as entrepreneurs is not so much to make money, but it is to develop for the better and for all. And of course, to enjoy your benefits. You know, they say a management consultant would say that every business actually plays a spiritual purpose. Because without business, there's no development.
For sure.
There's no knowledge, there's no teaching, there's no expansion. So I think as a nation, we need to ask ourselves a question. We're at a very critical juncture in our journey as a constitution. We must ask ourselves first, who am I in this story? I was watching Shagai Lembe the one time, and I actually shed tears because there was one scene there that just really took me back. I had just coincidentally delivered a presentation on a certain piece of act at a certain conference. And I gave them a historical background to this act. Now, when I was watching Shagai Lembe, I saw there's different clans. At that point in time, they were fighting against each other. But this scene was a scene at which the colonizers were now there. They've come to South Africa. And I thought to myself, you know this rule and divide has been there. Even the colonizers became. We're fighting against our own.
For sure.
There was never a certain point at some time when there was a conference of all of these kings to say, man, hang on a second, guys. There's a stranger in our midst.
For sure.
And this stranger has come in our midst for one object only, to conquer. So the structure of our economy in our society has really not changed. It really hasn't. We've just become a modern version of it. Oof. And you and I ought to change that. How?
Yes.
I think, first and most, I always have this concept of a family tree. If you don't know who you are, then you won't know where you're going. So I think it's important as a nation, first, to figure out what are our values, what do we believe in, and what are our rights, what are our responsibilities, and we work out the necessary character to be able to live amongst each other and ourselves together with a common vision. I regret at this point in time, I really can't point to one national objective and say this is our vision as a country. No. We are in silos. There's no leadership.
Sadly.
But how do we lead ourselves? Personal leadership. Home. Yeah, again, another issue which is close to my heart, the issue of GBV, for example, in all its forms. You know, I often say to myself, when I see these people go in march about GBV, which is bad, which is a good thing, and I say, you know, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, Peter, do that. Peter does it on his own.
For sure.
But of course, there are societal issues that are embedded there that causes Peter to do that.
For sure.
So I think we have a lot of things to do. Really, I don't think we can go forward as a nation unless we wake up and realize the amount of trauma that we have. And I see that trauma in SA Credit clear. You might look at it as credit.
Right.
It's more than that. It's trauma. I mean, can you imagine? You can't make decisions about your home and your family for the future because you are shackled by this thing called credit adverse listing. Do you know some of the impact of that in people's lives? The stress, the psychological impact. People divorce. Yeah. People get into all sorts of things because of that. So what I'm trying to say is that this dis-ease, when I keep on saying behavior and values, this dis-ease to cure it, not to treat it as a symptom of let's repair, go back, but to treat this values and behavior are important. But we have to heal. We have to heal from that. And I think that's a personal choice. That's why I think we need to get into a different era now of a spiritual revolution.
Right.
Without its, I don't want to be misinterpreted. When I say spiritual revolution, I mean something more than just the word spirit.
Right.
It's a heartfelt process. That's a heartfelt process of me as Brian. I want to look for credit. I need to do my own spiritual revolution.
Right.
Which is, who am I? Why do I want this house? Why do I want this car? Why do I want to buy this thing? Those questions will evoke in you that substance that you require, the character, to be able to navigate through this. Because I'll tell you, for one, if someone wants to go and buy a Ferrari, you can't even buy a Ferrari in credit. Some people do. If you want to go and buy a Ferrari, you're certainly not in a position to buy one if other things in your life have not been put straight. So it's an indication that there is a dis-ease. Maybe it's got a lot to say about you. Because a lot of people, they spend to project, to close the wounds. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to go in and heal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And on that note, I told you when you came in that I launched this podcast because I want to talk to the best of us. You truly represent the best of us. I think this has been a phenomenal conversation. Definitely not the last one. You're definitely going to be a repeat guest. And for those of you who've stayed this long, thank you. Thank you for watching the Winners Win podcast. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Give your thoughts on some of the amazing knowledge that Brian has shared. And we'll see you next time. We out.